Okay, let's look at the title. It all turns to dust in the end. So what does that mean? So it sounds a little bit like Northern Lights, like everything is dust. It all turns to dust in the end. So basically, humans believe they are human doers rather than human beings. And most people spend their life doing, always doing something, always being something. But our name kind of gives it away, human being. I don't know what that's like in other languages, but maybe it's similar. We're not called human doer. I suspect that maybe our bodies only want to work a max 5 hours a day. And that's maybe for everybody. If I look at Khaleesi, or if I look at, I'm not sure if we're meat eaters or vegetarians, we're most probably both. Our teeth aren't that of a meat eater's. But we seem to have eaten meat for many generations. Maybe we are slightly meat eaters, but yeah, who knows what we naturally were meant to be. But if I look at Khaleesi, say, so a dog, they eat and they spend hunting maybe 4 hours at max a day. Depends, I suppose, on when the hunt is. Maybe if they're like wild dogs, they would hunt one day and use a lot more exercise and sleep. But I know from living with Khaleesi, she's only awake about 4 hours a day. I do, yeah, maybe a bit more than that. But if you own a dog, you'll know that they sleep a lot of the time. And when she is awake, like we do walking, we do exercise, but she also does a lot of like sitting around and watching, or she's not happy, or yeah, just chilling. And I suspect that we overwork because of the ego and the sense of self that has grown. We push ourselves mentally by our idea of what should be, our idea of what we want society or our life to look like. And then we've kind of got into this flow of doing this. I'm sure it's way more complex than that, actually. It's to do with the structure of our society, but most people are expected to work at least 8 hours a day and then have a family and come back and do family stuff, which in a way is work. And relaxing is normally watching TV, which in a way is learning. Storytelling is a way of learning. So it's kind of like humans spend most of their waking hours doing something. Like it's very rarely that you just sit round and look off into the distance, or just lay on the sofa or lay in bed. Not from a depressive point of view, like I can't get out because I'm so exhausted, but just from a relaxed point of view, just appreciating what you have. Like sometimes people pay lots of money to go and, you know, like spend time in a really beautiful place, like on holiday, but then they have to have lots of activities and Wi-Fi to entertain them all the time. Like they have the nice view, but they don't really sit and appreciate it. It's like become another commodity. So we've become these human doers that are always doing something. if we listen to our body would most probably prefer to do this. But we are so conditioned to listen to our mind and our sense of self. And it's not our thoughts, it's actually conditioned from society that you have to be something, that you have to create something, that you have to do something great, that you have to be special, that you have to be happy, that you have to have kids, that you have to go on lots of holidays, that you have to travel and go to museums or parks or have fun or do exquisite things. So this is conditioned and bred into us, and this is what we're told happiness is. It's really ingenious the way capitalism works, as opposed to what we've seen of communism, although I suspect a lot of people that live in communism, it's not really communism. But it's because it gives the illusion of freedom, because it gives the illusion of choice. And it also gives the illusion that your life is your responsibility. So it's like it sets you up, it puts you in the education system, and then it sets you up and it says, okay, now we've given you all the skills, now you go and make the best of it, and if you're unhappy, it's your fault because we've given you all the skills that you need to deal with life now. And you get to choose to do all these things, and you get all the freedom there is, but it's all on you. So if you go bankrupt, or if you end up in prison, or if you aren't happy, it's on you. But we're so heavenly conditioned, we can't see through this illusion of choice. So you go into the supermarket and you've got like 20 toothpastes to pick through, which is kind of crazy because capitalism pays a high price for the illusion of choices of the individual people in the society. So you go into the supermarket and you've got all these different toothpastes, or all these different washing powders, or all these different beauty products, or all these different clothes. So it gives you the feeling like you're choosing and you're in control of your life. So it makes you feel that you're not a slave to a society, you're not like a bee in a hive or an ant in an ant's nest, that you are free and you're independent because you can choose. And then it kind of like plays this game where we compete against each other for what we choose, like who has got the best house, or who has got the nicest furniture, or who is the most successful. And all of it makes people feel free to an extent. But I just put that in abbreviation marks. What's that called? Quotation marks, because it's very elusive, because it's dependent on you earning lots of things called money, lots of coins called money, in order to pay for all of this. So therefore you have to have a job where you work really hard and you spend all your living hours working at that job in order to achieve all these coins, in order to buy all these things and to have the appearance of choice. If you're really poor, if you have a really bad job and you end up as a server in McDonald's, which is actually what I wanted to be when I was like 5. If you were like a server in McDonald's, which is considered a bad job, which isn't a bad job, it's only a bad job because of you're selling people really unhealthy things, but actually being a server, that's beautiful. Like, why not? But it gives you really little amount of money, so you have very little choice in what you can do in society. So when you go into the supermarket, you're most likely looking for the cheapest option. When you go on holiday, it's the cheapest option if you can afford it. But it still gives you the feeling that you're free. So rather than being in maybe like a communist society, although I've never lived in a communist society, where you're told you have to work at this job, you have to have this car, you have to have these foods, you have the illusion that you are free. And if you are in the poorer realm of things, you just believe, if I was better, if I was more successful, if I was more clever, then I could have more choices. So it's therefore my fault. So I have failed to get more money. And so even though people feel bitter about being poor, they kind of don't rebel against the structure of the society. They kind of take it, especially in Western societies where poverty is not nice, but it's it tends to be that you can, even if you're really poor and you can't work, you can still have some form of home and food. You're not just left on the streets, although sometimes that is the case. But most of the time, the government offers you some sort of safety net. So capitalism is super interesting in the way it works, because it convinces everyone to work, but it makes everybody feel that it's their choice to work, that they're actually choosing to work. But actually they're in this kind of like cult. They're in this illusion of what they've been taught and what they've been brought up in. So often when people like get to 20 or 30s, they have like mental breakdowns about it, because it's like too much pressure on the person. And this is often when people get into spirituality. Like I got into spirituality. I was actually having mental breakdowns before I even got to career, because I had some difficulties in my childhood. So mentally I was very unbalanced. Which actually was fortunate, because if I hadn't been, I wouldn't have got to this subject. I notice now my friends are beginning to get into this subject, but it's more because they've got to the point in life where it's too stressful. Whereas I didn't exactly find it stressful. I was just emotionally traumatized by the time I left home. So obviously I was naturally drawn to this. So our society gives us the appearance of freedom, but it's a con. It really is a con. It's the same as communism, just set up differently. And it's maybe, I don't think communism is right either, because I think if the leaders, whatever society you have, if the leaders are in illusion, then it's just going to go back to this power game. And I don't know communism, I've not lived in communism, and I don't think what they acted out, it was communism. Like, I don't think that's right either. I think that creativity should be supported, and in communism, maybe it's not supported so much. But in capitalist society, it puts so much stress on the individual, because it makes this individual really focus on the idea of free will and the idea that your happiness is your responsibility by what you choose. And then when the child grows up and gets to 20 or 30s, they begin to have all these meltdowns because they're afraid of what they choose, because it holds too much responsibility, and they begin to feel depressed, but they can't really work out why. It's also, depression is often happening when your solar plexus is out of balance, and solar plexus is often about choice, like what I choose or what I don't choose. So it has this this element of I can do it, I can make it when it's in the positive, and when it's in the negative, I can't make it, nothing will work out, life is pointless, that type of narrative. So capitalism is really a con. Capitalism works for is people that are very intelligent, but not all intelligent people can harness their intelligence. Their intelligence sometimes becomes a disability. So people that are very intelligent, and also people that can cut off from their body and what they feel and push through that. So people that are more desensitized, so they can, work all these hours and their body can take it. So their body can take high levels of stress. But that is not the ideal. But our society sells that as if it's the ideal. Like the person that can work 17-hour days, that can have kids, that can work a full-time job, that can have lots of friendships, that can have a big social life, can do all these things. And there's no rest in that. It's just so intense. And to me, I think that's bound to create illness in a society and lots of suffering. In a communist society, the problem is I feel more than likely what happens is creativity is taken away. So something that we all are naturally as humans is creative. Like that's our skill as opposed to other animals. Like the elephant's skill is its strength and its height. A monkey's skill is ability to climb and also intelligence. But the human's skill is creativity. And so that's the problem, I suspect, with a communist society, is creativity is hindered. Some people say it's hindered because there's too much protection, because people become lazy. And I don't think that's actually the reason why. I think we naturally want to be creative. I think it's to do with psychology and the way we bring people up and educate them. Like if education is taught as play, then people will naturally find their creativity. And also the lack of presence. So realizing the beauty and the gift in the small things, in doing the shopping or planting vegetables or growing vegetables, in doing manual labor. Like most people are deriving their happiness from an idea of themselves. So an idea of themselves being really successful, like a really successful lawyer with a really big car, with a really beautiful view and a really big house, and people that cook for you. And that's not happiness. That is not happiness. Happiness is actually being in contact with the moment, being present to what's actually happening, being yourself, which is this moment. This moment is who you are, and that is your true happiness. And most people have the idea that happiness is a mental image of themselves in the future, achieving all these things. But these things will never satisfy you. It's like an endless bucket that you're trying to fill. It's like, you know, one of those magician's hats where he can put lots of things in there. Like, it's like endless. I think there's this really famous Buddhist story about this king. And he wanted to have freedom. And I can't really remember the story actually. I just remember the imagery of it. He wanted to have freedom, and so he said to a sage, "Can I buy freedom from you, or can I get freedom from you?" And the sage is like, "You can't pay for it, but I'm going to give you a hat." Oh no, he doesn't say you can't pay for it. He says, "Can I buy freedom off you?" And the sage is like, "You can't." He doesn't say you can't buy freedom. He says, "Okay, if you can fill my hat, then I will give you freedom, with all your possessions." So the king ends up putting all his possessions in the hat, but he can never fill the hat. And then in the end, he has nothing, which is meant to be a metaphor for your essence being nothing. Like when he has nothing, when he's naked and completely vulnerable to this moment, like then he becomes free. But it's not about giving away your possessions. You now don't have to give away your possessions. You can, if you like, go to my website and donate all your money to me. I won't be offended if you do that. Although it is a bit of a strain if you do. Being rich comes with consequences. It comes with karma. But I will take on that karma for the good of the world. In case you're autistic. No, that's actually, forget that. I'm not going to make a autistic joke. Yeah. So your freedom in this capitalist society is an illusion when you look at freedom through choices and through getting. You are never going to get freedom through an object or through becoming something. It's such a nice story, and it keeps people running and chasing as fast as they can, which reminds me of another Buddhist story, which is my favorite, of Gulamala, but I always get his name wrong, but you just have to follow me and, we'll go with the Gulamala, the dyslexic version of an Indian story. So the Buddha, there was an intellect who worked in a university. And for some reason, this intellect went a bit crazy and got it into his head that in order to be free or in order to work something out, he had to go and live in the jungle and kill people and cut off their small fingers. And when he'd got 100 fingers in a necklace around his neck, then he would be free. And when he was at 99, the Buddha decided to walk through the forest. And all the locals were like, "You can't walk through the forest. You can't walk through the forest. If you walk through the forest, Angulimala is going to kill you and cut off the little finger. And the Buddha's like, and the Buddha walks through the forest. And sure enough, Angulimala comes after him. And he runs and he runs and he runs, but no matter how much he runs, he cannot catch up with the Buddha. And then finally he's like, Buddha, stop walking so fast, I can't catch up with you. And the Buddha replies, it's not me who's walking too fast, it's you that is going too fast. I am perfectly still. You can't find me in that. Which is really beautiful. Again, that's a metaphor. It's highly unlikely that actually happened. And it's basically that his seeking mind, his suffering mind was going so fast, he couldn't see that his Buddha nature was perfectly still. And he couldn't catch up with the Buddha because you can't catch up with the Buddha in time. The Buddha, who you truly are, Buddha nature, so Buddha means your true nature, is right here. Your Buddha nature is here. Which is beautiful. And if you think about like what our society sells us as success, it's hilarious. Like that we all fall for it. Like that curtains made by a particular designer, or triple glazing, or specifically decorated room, or designer clothes or trainers or bags, or living in a particular location, having a particular car, having lots of women or men chasing you, being married to a supermodel or a billionaire, or going on really fancy holidays, having lots of kids, privately educating them. Like all these images. And what's really sad about it is that you will only know your success through other people's failings. Because as soon as that really high quality of life becomes the normal for everyone, in order for you to be special, in order for you to have made it, you're going to have to go higher. And then when everyone's made it to there, you're going to have to go higher. So in order for you to find your success in this society, there has to by default be people that have failed, which is so crazy that that's what we're doing, that's what we're telling each other. That success is comparison to your neighbors. Success is a material thing. Like it really doesn't matter. I remember in going to Greece like 6 or 7 years ago, and I was with some friends, and we ended up in this town that was so ugly, and we got a hotel booked there for 2 days, and I just remember finding it so funny because it really didn't matter if the town is ugly or beautiful, like who cares? Like in the end, it's all life. Like when you're in a really beautiful town, you most probably appreciate it maybe 10 or 20 times. But most of the time what it's about is taking pictures to put onto Instagram or to show your friends. I mean, it's all so crazy. And then it's like, well, why don't we just do the tourism of ugly towns? Like really ugly places. Let's see if we can do that. Like that could become the next trend. It really doesn't matter. It's only a view. It's like all about specialness. How special are you? Are you special enough to have this or that? And this takes away our creativity, because to be really creative, to be genuinely creative, is you do it for nothing. You do it just to be creative. And then you give it to life. If it's successful, it belongs to life and life will make it successful. If it's not meant to be successful, you give it to life and it's not successful. And when you're creating it, even though you have like a general idea about what its use is going to be if you're writing a book that people read it, it's really not the reason why you're writing it. You're writing it because of the joy of creativity in that moment. Like that's true creativity. And that's creativity coming from God. That's creativity coming from something else, coming from a divine place. Creativity that comes from, I'm doing it to be something, I'm doing it to be successful, is selfish, is small, is contracting. It's like about you growing and you becoming something bigger and better than. And you really don't need to be bigger and better than. When you're bigger and better than, then you have problems of your own, because then other people want to pull you down, because it's an unbalanced system. So then you've got other people that like look up and worship you, but then it's like a needy energy. Like I have some friends that are famous, and it's disturbing being famous, because everybody wants a piece of you. It's not like you imagine it. And then you can't really go out. If you make friends, like you're not sure what their motive is, what their intention is. And then with money, if you get loads of money, then you have to protect your money from other people. And then people get paranoid about losing that money. Some of the most suffering people that I've come across since teaching are people that are really rich. It's not what you think it is. Like if we looked at it in the animal world, like hoarding all your nuggets away, like so in the animal world, I suppose animals do it as well, but what it looks like basically with this idea of money and the idea of becoming really rich or really successful is it means, like if you imagine it with squirrels, it means like one squirrel having as many nuts as a whole massive tree, and then the squirrel next to you only has 2 nuts, and then the squirrel down from you only has 3 nuts, and then the squirrel down from you has like further down has like 40 nuts. But then what that squirrel's responsibility is to stop the other squirrels trying to steal its nuts. Then it's like always getting paranoid, like which one's coming for me? It like doesn't venture out because it's like has to run back and check its nuts, keeps counting its nuts, keeps going over it and over it. There's nothing wrong with being rich as long as you have the right attitude. It's the way our society is set up, and I have met rich people that are really free with money, but it's has its dynamics. That is not happiness. It's not happiness having children. Say that's your big dream. Like it has beautiful moments to it. Maybe you think, oh, now I've got this built-in family, so I'll never be alone again. But it's not, that's not your savior, because they'll have difficulties. Maybe they grow up and they have severe depression. Maybe they're really happy and joyous, but it's got to have a life of its own. If your happiness and your company, your satisfaction is based on that, it's a life of suffering. You have to know and find the happiness of this moment. All other ego identities will hurt you. So all other versions of yourself will hurt you. And what it does when you have all these ideas that creating something, that being creative or making lots of money makes you free, what it will do is it will make all activities too important. It will put too much stress and pressure on it. So you'll stop enjoying it for what it is, and it will all become about the future, a mental concept of something in the future. This is something I was going to link that up to. And you get further and further away from home, which is this present moment. So of course this present moment is home, because it's what you always have. So what I define as home is, and freedom and happiness is what's always with you. So your essence, Ramesh Balsekar, my teacher, used to say, your birthright is freedom. So your essence is freedom. That's the same of what Ramana Maharshi says, Nisargadatta Maharaj, the Buddha, the Vedas. All of it implies, even Jesus Christ implies that freedom, your birthright, your home, is in you, is you. God is in you, the divine is in you, and it's in what is always here. And this moment is what's always here. What is also always here is consciousness and beingness. So these three elements, which aren't separate from themselves, are what's always here. So your whole life you've always had consciousness, this looking, this emptiness. You've always had this moment, even though in this moment the scenery changes, the people change, the sounds change, you always are here. And then you've always had this sense of existence. No matter what you've done, you've had those three things. You as a person, the idea of yourself comes and goes. Your idea of self as rich, as young, as middle-aged, as old, that comes and goes. Your idea of yourself as a good person, a bad person, a right person, a guilty person, a naughty person, a strong person, a handsome person, an ugly person, all of that is coming and going all the time. But what remains is consciousness, beingness, and this moment, and that's who you are, and that's your freedom. When you're identified with an illusion, so when you're identified with the story of yourself, of somebody that has to be successful, then you cut off from this present moment and you live in imagination. So you're living through this fog of imagination, of what I have to be, and always dreaming about something else than what is. Then what happens is your imagination is setting off your emotional body. So if your dream of what you want to be, someone really successful, isn't happening, then your imagination is saying to you, I've not made it yet, I've not made it, I'm bad. And then it's setting off your emotional body and your chakras and putting them in painful, depressive, angry, violent states of being. So then the next thing that happens is you numb out your body. You stop feeling what's below your neck. And you're just residing in this imagination of yourself. And then this makes the body very tense and very stressed. So often what happens when waking up is you begin to see the illusion mentally, and then you begin to undo that and become more present to the body and more present to what you're feeling and more present to what's actually happening rather than what you imagine is happening. And then as that begins to break down, so the next level beyond that, you begin to really recognize that there's three things that are always present that aren't things and that aren't separate. It's consciousness, this moment, and beingness. You've always had that, and this is home. This is absolute love. It's love beyond your wildest dreams. It's total love. It's what you came from when you were born and what you will dissolve back into when you die, and it's what everyone is made up from. So it's now love speaking to love. The person, it goes through a filter of a person that's rejecting love, but behind that person is love. It's this vibrant presence that's ecstatic to express itself in all these different forms. Knowing that element of yourself and then living the human life, I think you come to a more peaceful and balanced life on the human level. Remembering who you truly are, and that being seen or appearing in the human, so remembering your divine aspect that you are love, and then that expanding the human, you become a more peaceful and balanced and happy human. That integrating into the human. But that integration is like an endless process. Everything in this life is an endless process, if you haven't realized. Everything is always evolving. But the end of suffering is to really know who you are beyond all forms. It's not in getting money, fame, success, children, wow, all these things. I assure you. I've lived so many different lives in this life. So many different lives. And currently in the lockdown, I have been in a very small apartment. It's really beautiful, but it's a small apartment. It's not by the beach. I can't complain. But it's a small apartment, and it's also, lots of people around. And because I'm an empath, like living in cities or not living in nature is a little bit more stressful on my system. It's much easier for my system when I have nature surrounding me. So I'm not in favorable circumstances, but that doesn't take away your happiness. I assure you, I would feel exactly the same. My body might be a little less stressed, like not stressed. My body gets tired, you know, from not being in nature. So it's a little like more stressful on my body living in the city, but it's not my unhappiness. I could live in a mansion, I would feel the same. My body would just be more in flow if it was in nature, but that's irrelevant, that part. It's exactly the same, a mansion or this small apartment, it's your same sense of being. If you're in suffering, you can be in the mansion and you can be in the apartment, and it will be the same. You'll just get a high when you first move into the apartment, and then your natural way of being will come back, and then you'll start feeling not good enough again, or like this isn't enough. It's not that. Okay. I have spoken a lot. I don't even know if there's still people there. There is. There is still people here. So, oh yeah, the title of it is In the End It All Comes to Dust. So you build all this life and you make this whole identity of yourself. You create all these things that society has told you. If you do this, you'll be happy. You create Trump towers, but then in the end, it all comes to dust. It's like those dandelion thistles. You blow them and they all disappear into the wind. So it's like when you die, it's all dust. It's gone, it's gone, it's gone. And in a way, your death is every moment. So in a way, everything you have doesn't really exist. So all these things that you think are important, in the end, it all turns to dust. Like you look from a bigger perspective and none of it matters. The problems you're having in our society, living in a big or small apartment, having curtains which are embroidered from Italy, or a Tibetan monk blessing you from Tibet, all of it comes to dust. It really doesn't matter. And that is not depressing. It's beautiful, because what it means is that you have that childlike wonder, that childlike freedom of this moment. You know, as children, like you played your games and you made up these little worlds, and in the end it all fell back into itself. It all really didn't matter. Like all those mandalas that they make out of sand, and then the wind comes and the mandala is gone. They spend hours and hours, days making these mandalas, and then it's all brushed away. Really doesn't matter. You don't have to be anything. And when you don't get depressed about that, when you don't see that as depressing, you see it as such a relief. It's only depressing because you're living in the solar plexus energy. You're living in this energy that I have to be something. And then when you say it all comes to dust, then the solar plexus goes to the opposite and goes, I'm hopeless, I'm nothing, I don't matter. And it's not talking in that world, it's talking in the bigger perspective. So it's not saying to you you're pointless or that you'll turn to dust on the human, like on the solar plexus level. It's talking about it on the greater scheme of things. Our life is so impersonal, and we take it all so personally. So if you take the title negatively, it's only because you're living in your solar plexus energy of I have to be something. And if I'm not something, then life is pointless and meaningless and I want to die. You don't have to be something. You are the most divine expression of love right now. As you are, you're perfect in every single way. Nice. Okay, we go to questions. The end of the rant. The rant, rant, rant. The rant, rant, rant. You could say rant, or you could say love expressing itself. The end of the rant, I can say jokingly on the human level, and then you could say that the end of, or the end of love's speech. Oh, that sounds really naff. Okay,